Hey everybody, it's me Ashish, and before we begin, I just want to give a quick thank you to everybody listening, watching, and supporting the podcast. It means the world to us, and we're so appreciative. I just want to let you guys know that you guys can always ask us questions, give us segment ideas, and keep up with the fun, all at AshishandFriends.com. We're on Twitter at AshishandPals, we're on Instagram at AshishandFriends, and hey, we're even on Facebook, facebook.com/AshishandFriendsPod. If you're watching this video, please go ahead and give it a like and subscribe to the channel. All that following and liking and subscribing will help us grow and keep going, so we appreciate it so much. And once again, thank you, and I hope you enjoy the episode. Yes, welcome to another great episode of the Ashish and Friends podcast. As always, I'm your host Ashish. You can catch me on Instagram and on Twitter at Ashish Airy. As always, I'm joined by my longtime friends and co-hosts. We've got Shahan at Shahan Jayaraja. We've got Ryan as well. Today we're going to be talking about something that's actually not talked about enough. And with everything going on this year, it's very important to talk about it, and that's mental health. There's been quite a few things going on, obviously with COVID-19 going on. We can't see our friends or family as much, but there's a plenty of reasons why someone could be dealing with anxiety or depression. And we just want to talk about those things, and we're going to talk about ways to deal with it and how we deal with it. So Ryan, what are some of the reasons, like with everything going on this year, that people will be, having a bad mental health year so far?
I think that 2020 has been such a tumultuous year with all the events that have been taking place and occurring, such as the Black Lives Movement, that for the Black individuals are being oppressed, and a lot of the white individuals or other people not understanding what's going on and trying to learn that can be very difficult. The wildfires and the natural disasters, the hurricanes, also afflicting a lot of people, and really the big issue is the COVID-19 pandemic, which not only is causing a lot of problems such as lost jobs, lost family members, not being able to see family, and really losing that connection on top of things, which is super important in terms of mental health, because when you feel like you don't have those people that you're used to having near you, you don't have that connection, you sometimes bottle those feelings and those emotions and feel alone. And that's when those feelings of anxiety and depression really come about, especially when you're already dealing with the other events that have been going on, whether you're losing your job or not knowing where the next paycheck is coming from, or family members sick in the hospital and you can't see them. And so I think it's a very trying period that we're in right now. And that's why mental health is so important to be talked about.
For sure. And I mean, like you mentioned, like besides like COVID, like we can't see our friends or family because of it. Some of us have gotten it, right? And their families are affected. And one of those people is actually Shahan, right? Like me and Shahan have lost family members because of it. I'm sure like Shahan feels like a bunch of different ways because he's not able to spend the time. Here, I'll just pass to Shahan and ask him, Shahan, how do you feel with all this going on?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a very difficult time. And, the one thing that does make things feel a little better is knowing that everybody is all going through it too, right? This is such an important time, I think, to think about our mental health. And I mean, I will say, right, like the things that I do for mental health usually, like I play basketball. We can't do that right now, right? I mean, I hang out with friends. We can't do that. I still, don't feel super comfortable at this point going to the gym even, right? Like this is the sort of stuff that I usually do to deal with mental health and to handle my mental health. And, I think it's been really interesting because this time has also, I think, just been such an indicator of like, like our mental health is something that we have to constantly be aware of, right? And like, I know for me, like, I always thought that when I was like in Atlanta, for example, back when I lived alone and by myself, like I always thought like, okay, once I move and have people around me, and once I'm married and all that stuff, right? Like this sort of stuff won't be an issue anymore. And like, I think that there are things about being with people and like being married and having someone that do help, but it's actually been a really good reminder to me that it's no guarantee, right? Like your situation doesn't guarantee anything about your mental health. It can be a factor, it can be an influencer, but like really your mental health, regardless of how good your life is, how bad your life is, all of that, like it's something that you constantly have to keep an eye on. I mean, it's something that you have to take care of every single day.
That's a great point, Shahan. Like mental health is one of those things only really you could know that you're dealing with it. And sometimes it takes time to actually realize that, right? Sometimes you're like, oh, it's been days or weeks, I don't feel great. I'm not that happy anymore. Maybe something's going on. But like obviously with normal health, with cuts and bruises, those are easy to see. Everyone can see those. Mental health is something, sometimes people feel alone because they are battling those things just by themselves. So I think that's why one reason like it's really important to talk about these things because so many people are dealing with them. And with everything going on, obviously we mentioned with COVID-19, people getting sick and everything like that. I mean, people's vacations, people's, career changes, all those things get put on pause, marriages, whatever it is. And, it's nice that we see like celebrities and athletes that we look up to talking about these types of things. I know a couple of years ago, Kevin Love came out and it was a big deal at that time. He was talking about how he's, not always 100% and he's dealing with those things. And everyone was a little shook. Everyone's like, wow, no one's really spoken about this before. So it's just something I think it's relatively new, right? Like I feel like a decade ago, no one was talking about people's mental health, right? And, just recently, we're obviously, me and Ryan are Cowboys fans. Dak talked about him being a little suicidal after he lost his brother, right? And he lost his mom. So like people deal with loss and grieve in different ways, but it's important to be vocal about it, to seek the help you need, and try to do activities that try to that better your mental health for sure. And I feel like there's always been a stigma about talking about mental health, right? Especially as men, especially as people from South Asian culture. It's not something a lot of families like think about. When you're growing up, a lot of people are known to like suppress it because they don't want to be judged by the friends or family or society, to be honest, and be like, I don't know, yeah, judge and name something else. So if you guys want to talk about how to deal with that stigma or like overcome it, and if you want to talk about ways that you guys deal with your mental health and how you improve it.
Yeah, and I do want to jump off of that just for a second. You mentioned the stigma in the South Asian community, and there's a lot of reasons I think for that. And one of the key reasons is that obviously when you're in India, when you're, especially when you don't have sort of the privilege and money and stuff that we have, right? We are almost in survival mode, right? We're almost down to our base desires, right? That we need to, we need to support our families. We need to have enough food. We need to have a place to live, right? But I think that sometimes that sort of stuff is used to say that we don't also have in those communities even mental health issues, right? Because not being focused more immediately on your needs as a human doesn't mean that your mental health is necessarily in a good place, and obviously now all of us, we're obviously very thankful that we're all very privileged that we're in a place that we can actually think about our mental health and we can try and do that and be better and try to work on that and try to grow as humans, because again, not everybody has that opportunity. That doesn't mean that they don't struggle with mental health. That just means that we have the ability, and hopefully more people long term have the ability to think about it. And so for me, I think that one of the things that I do is, again, I try and be active. Being cooped up in the house is something that is really difficult. And it's obviously during this time something that everybody is dealing with, right? Nobody's really able to go out and do all the activities that they wanted to do before. But trying to create space is one thing to do that. And another thing for me, right? And it depends on the type of person that you are. I'm kind of an introverted person. Like I'm not somebody who is constantly with friends, constantly in crowds. Like I kind of need my alone time, and that's actually something for me that's been kind of funny because again, like I'm married, I have somebody living at home here with me. Like I love my wife, I love Bhargavi. Sometimes I need time away. Sometimes I need to be like, I'm just gonna go do this thing and not interact with you for a while, which is kind of weird because like you think you've been waiting all this time to interact with the people around you, but like sometimes you need to not do that, and that needs to be okay for you, and that needs to you need to communicate to make sure that that's okay for other people too, right? So again, this is something that's a constant battle. You need to do things that you like to do. You need to do things that make you feel like life is valuable and that you enjoy your time, and that can be something that's very difficult to do at times, but it has to be a conscious effort, and it needs to be an everyday thing.
Yeah,
For sure.
To piggyback off of Shahan, I don't think any one person can make you a happy person. You have to deep down foundation yourself find that happiness, and that's why that self alone time is so important. Because if you're always depending on other people, you'll never find the happiness within yourself. When people, I learned this from when I was in undergrad. They said someone can't make you happy. They can make you happier, but they can't make you happy. And that stuck with me since my first year of college. And the second thing I wanted to mention is and I believe Ashish kind of alluded to it, is being open about your situation and vulnerable. Because I use a metaphor to say is if you want someone to find you but you're hiding in darkness, it's going to be very hard for someone to find you. And I think it's the same way as people don't know what you're going through, and when people don't know what you're going through, it makes you actually make you feel more lonely because you don't think anybody cares. But people do actually care about you, but they might not know that you're going through something or struggling with something, and people do want to help you. I mean, I remember a good example when I just moved away for the first time to Brownsville, my first job, and I was all alone. And I reached out to Shahan, and he's a super busy person, doesn't have time. But he like sat down and talked with him because he had just been in Atlanta in the same situation, and just knowing that people are going through similar things as you and can relate to you is a very powerful testament. It makes you realize that you're not alone in your struggles, and people have similar struggles and similar stories and have gone through it.
Yeah, that's great. I actually had no idea about that. I know obviously you moved and everything, but that's great. You reach out for it. Like, sometimes that's hard to do is to reach out, get some help. But that's so important. If you can't overcome it yourself, you need to seek help, and you shouldn't feel, weak or judge or anything like that, right? You got to take care of yourself. That's at the end of the day, you have to take do whatever you need to take care of yourself. So a few other things that I do and some tips I read, I try to write in a journal at the end of the day. It's a good way to put out your thoughts and feelings. Sometimes you can't talk to someone, right? Sometimes people are busy or whatnot. It's a great way just to like as a daily reminder and like a great way to release whatever's in you is to write in a journal daily. And I think meditation is another thing people like to pick up and something I do. It's very nice because I think it kind of releases that stress that's built up in you and kind of gives you that uh, peace of mind that you're trying to look for. And I read some other things like Shahan mentioned, getting some activity, going outside. These are things that are great for you, getting that vitamin D and just being active. I think somehow doing exercise. Me and Ryan have looked at some TED talks. You release endorphins and all these things that kind of boost your mood. So I feel like there's a lot of things that you can do, whether it's like taking care of your friendships, checking on your friends, your family, and talking with them, watching your diet, not eating out too badly, right? Like those things, all those things kind of pile up and can affect how your mental health is doing. Um, some other things, just make sure you can partake in some social activities in your community with friends, those type of things. I think especially during this time when you have so much free time, you can like dive into your hobbies, right? Like I know Ryan's picked up his guitar now, right? Like he has more free time, I have more free time, everyone has more free time. Do work on those passion projects that make you so happy. I mean, that's actually how this podcast came together is my grandma passed away in March and I was not in a great place, and I was like, with this extra time, we should definitely do something. And that's how this podcast came to be. And, over the time, Shahan's dealt with things. I've dealt with things. I lost my mother and lost my other grandma and all these things. But, every time we record, it's just like a whole different mind space for me. I'm just so happy and excited for that. So like Shahan mentioned, try to find something that you can do daily, and it's a good way to always like check on your mental health. Is there anything else that you guys would like to advise or stories you guys have?
Yeah, some things I also do is, like you mentioned, the arts. I think the arts is a very powerful thing because it's such a powerful form of expression. To be able to express like what you're feeling and the feelings, whether it's writing or drawing or music, I think that's a very powerful way of dealing with mental health issues, whether it's depression or anxiety or whatnot. And then also for me, it's just finding safe spaces and people I can trust, just talk about life, and for them to talk to me, like help each other to help each other, and also to volunteer. Like when I'm helping other people or giving back, it helps me forget about what I'm dealing with, and make me feel a little better by helping other people out. And then sports, and then just going in nature and just kind of getting away, almost distracting yourself so to speak. When you go in that environment, that nature, even in the hospital, nature is one of those things that kind of actually help patients get better faster, giving them like a picture of nature or a window to the outside. Because this is something that's like you remember the beauty of the world and the earth, and kind of takes you away from what you're actually going through. And then I think lastly, also just seeking help. I think therapy is a valuable tool for anybody. There's a big stigma on therapy, as we mentioned, but I think honestly, it's just another safe space. Whether it's talking to someone like Ashish or Shahan, or going to a safe space with a therapist. Every therapist isn't for you, but you can always figure out and search and find one. And it's a nice space. It's someone who's trained to talk to people and help people with their issues. And I think it's another good way to deal with your mental health.
Well, and I'll actually ask you guys real quick. Have either of you guys done therapy or been to therapy before? And you don't have to answer that, obviously. That's a very personal question, but I'm just curious.
So I'll start. I have not, but it's something I've definitely looked into. Obviously, I mentioned a couple things I've been through, and you know, like Ryan was talking about, if you can't reach out to family or friends that often, right? It's nice to have like a dedicated time to just go to talk to someone that will listen, right? And maybe like you said, therapy is not always free. There's always like supportive groups you can find as well, and I think that's like another good option and another way to be free. It's not something I've done yet. Like I said, I have not done therapy yet, but something that obviously anyone could benefit from.
Hmm. Yeah, I think therapy is a good idea. I mean, I've tried it a couple times and it's helped me. It's just a safe space. Someone that's listened, doesn't judge you, just listens and tries to help you and give you tools and strategies to help cope with whatever you're going through. So I think it's a very helpful thing.
Yeah, so I actually went for a little bit back when I was in high school, actually. And the funny thing is, right, like again, there's sort of this idea sometimes that people have that like you need to like be at a certain point, or I don't know, that things need to be a certain way, or you need to be a certain type of person in order to try therapy. And honestly, I mean, that's really not the case, right? Like, I mean, I actually think in a lot of ways, there are different types of therapists. Obviously, there's therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists who can potentially do more from like the pharmaceutical side of things. But I honestly feel like almost anybody can benefit from going to a therapist. And the reason is, right, like more than anything, it's just somebody whose job it is to basically help you process your thoughts, right, and process what's going on in your head. And don't get me wrong, like you have to find the right therapist, you have to find the right person, and also one of the things too, and this is kind of an interesting thing for people who are who maybe have kids, who potentially need therapy, is you do have to want to do it, right? Because I think for me, especially the first couple of times I went, I didn't really want to do it. I didn't really want to be here. I didn't think there was a problem. And it's like anything else. Like if you don't believe that there's a problem, like admitting you have a problem is the first step, because then you can get help. Like that's something that we hear a lot, especially when it comes to like addiction and stuff. But it's really true for anything. If you don't believe you have a problem, it's never going to get better. And so all that to say, I mean, it's if you're in a tough place, like therapy is something, even if you have, seemingly a great life, even if you have, things around you that seem to be going well, like therapy is not just for the worst moments in your life, right? Therapy is for, making sure that as many of moments as possible can be the best moments of your life. And, sort of on a similar track to kind of what they were talking about, like one thing too is that the more that you talk to people about what you're feeling, the more they'll feel comfortable talking to you as well, right? And so I know for me, like I've got it's kind of fun. I've got a little bit of like I guess a reflective personality sometimes, where like whatever somebody else is doing, whatever they're talking about, I kind of mirror that, right? Like it's kind of funny because you actually I mean, again, I'm not gonna sit here and try to go into my entire, break down my entire mental being by any means, but like, so for me, right, like when somebody's really outgoing, I can mirror that really well, right? When somebody's really quiet, I kind of mirror that, and which also that's something that I've tried to, dig into and figure out who is me, what am I, by myself. But a lot of people are kind of like that, where if you don't talk to them about your issues, they don't feel safe talking to you about their issues. If you go to them first when you're having trouble, it builds a bridge there to where when it's the other way too, it's a two-way street all of a sudden. So look, you might think that you're putting a burden on someone to do that, but in reality, a lot of the time, you're actually opening a bridge that's going to eventually benefit both of you.
Well, that's a really nice point there, Shahan. And actually, I'll talk about this with Shahan too. Like Shahan's talked to me about like not opening up whenever we go out with other friends and stuff. And it's something I've thought about too. And maybe it's something I was going through or didn't want to share with everyone or whatever it is. But like sometimes you can see those signals in someone. I mean, it's a great time to check on your friends and make sure they're doing well. But sometimes you can see these things in public when you're hanging out with friends. Maybe they are going through something or whatnot. But that's a good point, man. You have to open up. You have to open up with your friends, family. That's another reason why a therapist is so good too. Like, even though you don't want to be judged by friends or family, sometimes you can't handle it, right? Like you just don't want to do it. So a therapist is someone that's like studied this and really knowledgeable, and they're not going to judge you, and you feel just completely free and get whatever's off your chest and your mind, and just be completely honest with it, and try to work through whatever you're going through. And like Sean mentioned, it's not only if you're doing the bad things, right? Like if you're going through a great time too, it's a great way just to discuss everything you're going through, and maybe you're doing something that's actually something you do every single day of your life, which will benefit you. So I think that's great. I'm just going to ask if there's any other things you guys want to mention. I know one other thing is social media use, right? Like Shahan uses it for his work, right? At other time, Ryan's obviously not on social media. That's why I don't give his handle at the beginning of episodes, if you haven't noticed. But sometimes social media can be a good thing or a bad thing, right? Like if you use it to look at memes, to laugh, or pictures that make you happy, that's great. But if you're going to use it as a comparison tool, right, or like a fear of missing out type thing, it can have a really bad negative effect on your mind. So just pay attention to how much time you're actually spending on social media and if it's actually benefiting you or not.
Yeah, and one thing, going back a little bit, like again, we are South Asians. Our community is based a lot on reputation, right? That's such a big part of South Asian culture is, doing well for your family, portraying your family well, representing your family well. And I think that there's a lot of good things about that, right? But the one thing is, right, and one thing that I sometimes have to unlearn, and sometimes I think that all of us have to unlearn, is that, in America, we're starting to move more towards, that's not the most important thing, right? Our individual, happiness, yes, but also like our individual well-being is more important than that. And so I know that there's a lot of people who don't like talking about things or like, like she said, I mean, feel like they'll be judged for things. The reality is most people want to help you. Most people don't want to judge you. And you obviously have to figure out who those people are. There are people out there who want to tear you down, who want to be bad influences on you, want to, only want the worst for you, I guess. But once you find people who aren't those people, like, again, we have to get to a place, as individuals, and obviously, especially in the South Asian community, where we can say things, we can believe things without it reflecting badly on us, or without it reflecting badly on the community. Because I'll like, without getting too specific into anything, but like, I mean, for my family, right? Like, we've had some things that have happened in our family, and like, sometimes we're just so afraid for other people to know about it, because they think that, we want to portray ourselves as like this sort of perfect family. But like, that doesn't help anyone, right? Like, I know that like my dad's parents growing up, like, that was a big thing, was that, they had the three kids, and, one of them went to Cambridge and one of them went to Brown, and, two of them are doctors and one is like a CEO. And like, everybody wants to talk about like how great that was. And in reality, what ended up happening was that a lot of the time, like, other family was more just like trying to find ways to tear them down, right? And like, what good is that? Who does that benefit? And like, I've definitely seen that within my own family of people wanting the worst for you because of that reputational thing, right? Because these people try to portray themselves well, so you want to figure out what's wrong. And again, I think that all that does is have a detrimental effect on our mental health, because we hold ourselves to standards that no one should be expected to hold themselves to. And also it means that we're not willing to open up to the people who we care about. And again, that's a tremendous loss. So look, I think that all that to say, we need to not worry so much what other people think and how people will react. You find the group of people who you love, who you're close to, who you care about, and it doesn't matter what they think, as long as you guys care for each other and love each other and understand where you're coming from. Like, don't worry about whether they're gonna think that you have the perfect family. That's not what's important. Your mental health and well-being is.
I 100% agree with that. And one last thing I wanted to add is that I think that you may think that people will think of you as weak, or they judge you based on you sharing your feelings or sharing what you're going through or the difficulties you're going through. But in reality, and personally, I think that's probably one of the most courageous things you can do. It shows your strength. And if people are judging you or thinking differently, that's kind of their own issue and their own fault.
Yeah, exactly. That's the point. Seeking help, talking with other people, whatever it is. If you're sick, you're not going to be like, I'm not going to get medicine, otherwise that makes me look weak, right? Like, at the same note, mental health is at the same level as your physical health, right? Like, without it, there's nothing. And so that's why this is so important to talk about and take care of always. So do whatever you need to do. And like I said, we're always here. We're open at Ashish and Friends, at Ashish and Pals. You can hit us individually. Find your friends, find your family, whatever it is, or whatever makes you feel comfortable. I know it's hard to do, take that first step, but it's important to do. And that's why we're going to be advocating this mental health thing quite often, because I think it is something that gets, suppressed, like something we suppress all the time individually. Like, even myself over the past few years, I've dealt with quite a bit of anxiety and depression myself, and things I've done, like I mentioned, exercising and whatnot. So I've been through it. It's tough, and sometimes it comes back. When you suffer a lot of losses, whenever I think you just need to find out what it is that causes those anxieties and depressions in you as well. Sometimes it's your work, right? Like, if you're not passionate about what you're doing, right, and if you're in a toxic environment, that's not good for your mental health, right? Like, it might pay all the bills, right? But at the end of the day, who's actually winning here, right? So just take some time, reflect, see what's going on in your life, and take the positives, work on those, keep doing those, and try to cut out the negatives. But I think this is a very important topic. Please take care of your mental health, especially at a time like this when so much is going on in the world. And with that said, I just want to thank everyone for listening and tuning in. And until next time, we're out. See ya.